everyone, what's up? My name is Joss from squibblesreads and welcome to my June reading wrap-up and July TBR video. At the end of this video, I will also announce the 2 winners of my 3,000 subscriber giveaway. Before I start, over the past few weeks, I have had a lot of questions as to why I do rate books 3.5 stars and above, even though I don't really mention anything that's wrong with them. So this coming Monday, I will be posting a discussion video on how I rate books. Okay, by far my favorite book of the month, and perhaps for the entire year, is a short story collection of 11 stories called A Guide to Being Born by Ramona Osibel. Each story is about 10 to 15 pages in length and divided into 4 different sections. In the first section, Birth, there is a story about an 8-year-old girl with a developmental disability and discusses the impact of both history and family history. In the last section, Love, one of the stories uses the growth of extra arms as a metaphor for how people see and react to love. The rhythm, the repetition, and the dual meanings of some words not only contributed to the theme of the story, but also contributed to the theme of that section and to the theme of the entire book. Honestly, each story seriously fundamentally changed how I see myself and how I see the world, and I would give this short story collection 6 stars if I could. I also read Wink Poppy Midnight by April Genevieve Tucholke. You guys probably never thought that you would hear me say this, but I, like hardcore, don't want to talk about this book because I've thought about it so much. I changed my rating 4 different times, and my initial reaction to the book was very reactionary instead of reflective, which is really out of character for me. I think that the best way for me to communicate with you guys how I felt about this book is to leave a link to my Goodreads review in the down bar below. I'm like still in that reflection process, and it's just like too much for me right now, so we're just gonna move on. In my third Thrillers and More Thursday video, where I talk about books in the crime, mystery, and thriller genre, I talked about And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which I ended up giving 4.5 stars. This was a buddy read with Jessica from Between Stories. It is a classic mystery where 10 people are summoned to this island, and then a mysterious voice accuses them of all the crimes they've committed in the past, and then they are killed off one by one. I also read a more experimental and modern take on this kind of closed system, killing off one by one premise, and this book is called Security by Gina Woolstorff, which I gave 4 stars. It takes place at a new swanky resort called Manderley Bay, and it's about to open in Santa Barbara, California, and suddenly all the staff are disappearing and being killed off again one by one. It's super cool because sometimes there are simultaneous narratives and the page is like split in half vertically, so one of these narratives takes place on the left side of the page and the other one takes place on the right side of the page. I thought that was super cool, and I think it worked really well. The third book I talked about in that video is With Malice by Eileen Cook, which I believe is a YA thriller based on the murder of Meredith Kercher, which took place in 2007. It has comparisons to We Were Liars and Dangerous Girls. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. If you want to hear more about these 3 books, I will leave a link to my Thrillers and More Thursday in the down bar below. Another phenomenal book that I read in the month of June was Homegoing by Ya Jessie, which covers over 300 years, 8 generations, and 2 countries. It's about the interactions between the British and the Ghanaian people starting in Ghana and moving to the United States. Remarking on intersectionality, specifically what it means to be a certain gender, not only in that time period, but also relative to the location, family setting, and historical events. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I did do a full review of this book, which I will also leave in the description box. Another book that I read that also follows intersectional themes is Trail of Broken Wings by Sejal Badani. I also gave this book 4.5 stars. It is about an Indian family with 3 sisters who move to the United States, and they grapple with the role of each culture in their personal identity. Their father falls ill, which unearths devastating intergenerational family secrets. It tackles the expectations of each gender upon immigration and how that affects their children and then their children and so on. Another short story collection I finished is called The People in the Castle by Joan Aiken, which I did request for review. This collection is just a lot of fun. It reminds me a lot of some of the gothic fiction that I've read, and also some of like the creepy, suspenseful horror stories that I used to read when I was a little kid right before bed. It is kind of a more adult take on these stories, and it also has more of a whimsical feel. Each of these stories had some kind of twist and suspense. Like, for example, there is one about a mermaid who is held captive and brought back home by a sailor who keeps her in a bottle. There's another one about a poet who ends up in a duel and ends up falling in a volcano. Some of these stories do kind of have like a folktale type feel to them, but overall I really enjoyed this collection. I gave it 4.25 stars. I also read a new release called One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it is a contemporary book about a woman named Emma who, on their 1-year anniversary, her husband Jesse goes missing after a tragic accident. Years later, she is now in her 30s and she has remarried a childhood friend named Sam. Jessie is found, and of course she ends up struggling with her decisions. This book hit me in kind of a weird way because it seems like a love triangle, but it's not really your typical love triangle. I will say that the events that happen are kind of convenient. However, it touches so much on grief, evolution of the self. And this is one of those situations where me as a reader, I could have said, you know, in this situation, I would have done this or I would have done that. But really, do we really know like what we would have done if we were in that situation? And it's one of those books where an objective perspective is always 20/20. The author did not shy away from each character screwing up, giving it the sense of neither antagonist nor protagonist. They were all constantly reflecting throughout the book, and this made each character so human. I don't know what it was, but it really did give me that 5-star feeling, so I'm just gonna go with it. Yet another short story collection I requested for review was Treats by Laura Williams. Most of these stories take place in the 20th and 21st century and remark on themes like finding your identity within relationships, going out and finding a job and leaving college, and identities within relationship dynamics. A lot of them are written in second person, so it was like I was having conversations with these characters. I think my favorite one was the one that was actually called Treats. It's about an older woman who feels really lonely, and she expresses that in doing nice things for other people, but not necessarily herself. I also liked this other story that basically described a single woman going out and finding a cat. There were a lot of stories that had a sad theme, but the overall mood was uplifting and vice versa, and I thought that play on it was really cool, so I ended up giving this one 3.75 stars. During TBR Takedown, I did end up finishing The Crown's Game by Evelyn Skye, which I gave 3 stars, and Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare, which I gave 3.25 stars. I do want a little bit more space to talk about both these books, so I will not be reviewing them here and will be reviewing them in an upcoming video. I also read The Good Goodbye by Carla Buckley. The story opens with Natalie, who is a mother, and she's just gotten a phone call saying that her daughter Arden has been in this terrible accident and her cousin Rory is also involved in it. It is a thriller, so I won't give anything more away about it. But even though the premise seems a little bit overused, it portrayed seeking out and exploring different parts of identity, as well as parenting, expectations, and stereotypes through the background of the risk of physical health. Because it was marketed as a thriller, I was expecting some really well executed tension building, and that is where it was a little bit lacking, but overall I thought it did really good for what I think it intended to do, so I did give it 3.75 stars as well. Also during TBR Takedown, I did end up DNFing The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson at page 75. Like I was saying before, A Guide to Being Born by Ramona Ossibel is a collection of short stories that are about 15 pages each. So 75 pages is 6 times 15 pages. I was just thinking to myself that these 75 pages were not a fraction of as rewarding as even one of those short stories was. So it really ended up not being for me, and I did DNF it. In my circus themed books video, I did talk about a few books that I finished in June that I gave 3.5 stars or more and do have a circus theme to them. If I rate a book 3.5 stars, that is a pretty solid recommendation, so here are the books. The first one is The Gracekeepers by Kirsty Logan, which I gave 4 stars. The Tumbling Turner Sisters, 4 stars. The Ringmaster's Wife, 3.5 stars. And Magruder's Curiosity Cabinet, 4.25 stars. I will leave a link to that video if you guys want to hear me talk about the themes and styles of each individual book. Moving on to my July TBR, I still have not read The Well of Ascension or Everything I Never Told You, so I'm gonna try and read them in July. Also, I am about 70% through The School for Good and Evil by Soman Chainani. I did start reading this on physical copy, but I switched to the audiobook because I was having a really good time with it, so I'm gonna finish that up too. So now it's time to announce the 2 winners of my giveaway, each of whom will win a copy of Magruder's Curiosity Cabinet by H.P. Wood, which I just talked about. And the 2 winners are Simone's Books and Saubia Rahman. I'm really sorry if I pronounced your names wrong, but you are the 2 winners of my giveaway. I will try and contact you, but if you do want to get in touch with me first, the best ways to reach me are through DM on Twitter or through my email address, both of which are in the description box. Thank you guys so much for entering and giving me recommendations. I think my TBR has grown like exponentially from those recommendations. They were all awesome and so thoughtful, so I really, really appreciate it. That is it for this video. If you guys have any comments, questions, or anything else, please leave them down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.